All right, so let's begin. There is a change that has happened in once the war begins, and it's in the names. And the difference now is Triple Entente are now known as the Allies. And the Allies are those nations who will be aligned or connected to Britain, France, Russia, so on. Canada, we already know, is joined. Then on the other side, the Triple Alliances are now known as the Central Powers. Italy has left behind, is no longer part of Triple Alliance, but who's come to take their place is now the Ottoman Empire. So they are known now as the Central Powers. So from now on, when I refer to one side or the other, I'm not going to talk about them in terms of the Entente or the Alliance, but instead as the Allies and the Central Powers. All right, let's move on. A new kind of conflict. So this is going to be different. This war won't be fought like any war ever before. This war is going to be completely different. I talked to you about the summer wars. Yes? Who? Yes? Yes? Okay, so this war will not be like a summer war. This war they will slog through for 4 years. Winter, summer, spring, fall, whatever. The war is going to go on. So to start with, we have a Western Front. The Western Front, in case you are wondering where that is the battle that's taking place, as I have these, that is the battle that is taking place on French soil. That's the Western Front. So where will the Eastern Front be? Well, who else are they fighting? Germany's fighting? No, they're not fighting. The Austria-Hungary is their ally. Germany is fighting the battle. French, Russia. That would be your Eastern Front, is Russia. So it's a two-front war that the Schlieffen Plan was attempting to eliminate. Didn't succeed. So, because Belgium resists Germany long enough, they prevent Germans from reaching Paris, France. Gives them enough time for Britain to enter the war. And so what happens is they stop Germany 60 miles from Paris. That's not far, but it's enough to keep Paris still free and France still in the war. And they are successful in shoving them back now, and I'm talking about the Allies, shoving them back somewhat, so that Paris is no longer in immediate danger. They're still in danger, but they're not in immediate danger. This first battle is known as the Battle of the Marne. And over 2 million men fought in the first Battle of the Marne. Approximately 500,000 are going to get killed or wounded. Tell me what the percentage is then. In one battle, what's the percentage of death or wounded? Yeah, right. It's a quarter of the people who fought in this war will either be dead or wounded. Okay. That's pretty bad odds. Yeah, that's a quarter, and that's just your first battle. Okay, that if you think of it like that, I think then you realize, holy moly. Okay. All right. So, trench warfare then is the next issue. This is the new type of war. I'm sorry this is small, but I needed to get it all in, so do the best you can here. During the First Battle of the Marne, September 1914, the Germans finally pushed back, were pushed back by the Allied forces. They subsequently dug in. This is when they first established the trenches. They don't want to lose any more ground. So if you dig in, then you're less likely to lose ground. Then what happens is because the Allies are unable to break the German lines after they've dug in, they also will dig protective trenches. So by October 1914, so we are talking all of how many months into the war? 2 months. August was the start. So we've got 2 months into the war, and neither army could advance its position. Okay, they weren't going anywhere. They are dug in, mainly because the war is being waged much differently than ever before. The generals, who were the guys that were all dressed up, looking cool, man, wanted this war, they didn't have a clue how to fight it. Because both sides had dug in, that had never happened before, they didn't know what to do. So, it was very different than anything that had been fought before. Fast-moving strategies such as heads-on infantry attacks were not successful, and we're going to see why in a few minutes when we look closer at trench warfare. They clearly, this does explain it to a degree, those people that would go over the top of the trenches were met with severe machine gun fire and pretty much mowed down the people who were attempting to move forward. Modern weaponry like machine guns and heavy artillery made it impossible to move forward, and it created a stalemate. And what began as a temporary strategy, or at least the generals thought so, evolved into the main feature of the War of the Western Front for the next 4 years. So imagine that. You're fighting in trenches for 4 years. So, not a pleasant place. I'm just moving it up a little. I'm not moving it all the way to there. Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right, so a stalemate is no side gains any serious advantage. Each remain in their trenches, going over the top periodically to attack the other side. The other side mows them down, and then they return to their trench. Both sides are doing the same thing. Lines virtually remain unchanged the entire war. 4 years. No one gains an advantage. One side might move forward for a short while, but then invariably they would not capitalize on that success, and then the other side would come back, attack, and push them back. So the lines might change a little bit, but in fact stay the same virtually the entire war. All right. As part of the stalemate, then an area known as no man's land. This is a response to your question about what is no man's land. This is the area between the two lines of fighting. On one side is the German or the Central Powers. On the other side are the Allies. And in between that land was known as no man's land. And it was utterly destroyed. I'll show you some pictures here in just a second. Anything that was once there, like houses, trees, anything, there's nothing left. Particularly by the end of the war, it's a very dangerous area because of unexploded bombs, because of, well, we'll talk in a minute about poison gas. All those things becomes a very hazardous area. Yes?
When we were watching War Wars, the part where the horse got stuck in the barbed wire, that
Right.
was no man's land.
Yes, that's exactly right. That was no man's land. The whole area would be covered in this barbed wire. Do what? Not really yet. Landmines are a little bit beyond the technology yet. They are going to come certainly World War II. They'll be in full use during World War II, but landmines not so much yet. Yes?
What battle are they fighting in War Wars? What area were they
Oh,
in?
we're telling. I don't know. They don't talk about it because they use a period of time. You know, it could have been. Oh wait, they did talk about the Somme. they did talk about the Battle of the Somme. That is later in the that's about, begins, I believe, 1915 and goes through 1916. That one battle, either the Battle of Ypres or the Battle of the Somme, lasts almost 10 months. Yeah. Can't even imagine that, a 10-month battle. And the casualties were just outrageous. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let me show you a couple pictures before we go any further. Okay, it's okay, I'll come back to it. I should have, there we go. Come on. I don't know. Probably about 15 minutes. Yeah, about 15 minutes. All right. Here is a picture of, some of my words bleed through. Here's a picture of the soldiers beginning to go over the top. You can see there is little to protect them. And then when you look at this picture then, this is a picture of no man's land. And what you can see is what this had once been a forested area. What's happened to the trees?
Burnt down.
They're not burnt.
Shot down?
Shattered.
They're shattered. Yeah, they have been destroyed by all of the artillery. You can see the ground is just in terrible condition. It would be very difficult for these soldiers to even move across this land. All right, can I move forward?
No.
Yes.
All right.
No.
One more second.
Well, I'm in a serious.
Alright, I'm good.
You need to move over there because I know I'm in your way and I need to be here.
I'll do it in a second.
Okay.
How's your day going?
It's good so far.
Ready for this weekend?
Sure, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. This has been a very fast week.
I don't have any friends, so I just have to sit at home.
I'm sorry.
No, I have friends, I just don't like to leave because I'm lazy.
Oh, okay. You like to stay at home. You just don't like to get up and do anything.
No, she wants her friends to come to her house.
Is that how that works? Oh, man.
No.
All right, this is, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this map. What I want you to know here is just that this is approximately the line that these two, this is approximately the line that existed and stayed in place. This was, one side was Germany, I'm sorry, one side was Germany, the other side was France and England. And that's the way it stays. All right, so this new technology I want to spend a few minutes on. Machine guns were basically mowed down waves of soldier, making it nearly impossible to advance across no man's land. Each side had machine guns, so each side collectively would destroy anybody that went over the top in an effort to attack. And that's why by the time those men would move across no man's land, they were pretty well done. You saw in the movie some of that as they showed where they were easily picked off. Let me show you a picture, and I will come back. We'll get a chance to see. Oh man, I do not know why this is happening today. Generally it works just perfect, so I'll stay right here. Okay, here is a picture of the machine gun we're talking about. The earliest one was a, oh, I just lost the name of it. Something machine gun. It's just gone. Anyways, machine gun. All right. I can't believe I can't think of the name of it. No, the Gatling gun comes from this. I don't care. Here's a way that they use the machine gun. Attach it to the elephant.
That's not even right.
Okay. This also shows you that the war was not fought just in Europe, but it was also fought in areas all around the world.
Because that's probably what's more popular, man.
So this was one way of using the machine gun. All right. Then another is the artillery that were developed. In some cases, some of these cannons could fire as long as 10 miles away. That would mean that basically you could fire from here to Eaton. and be successful. Okay, so here's an example. One of the the artillery was not always this big, but here's an example of one mama-sized cannon. It is huge. It is huge. No, that isn't a tank. It's just a large metal tractor used for pulling.
How long did it take to like get that?
That's a big one there.
To make it or to
Like
move
get
it.
it around. Was it slow?
It was slow. Yes.
Hey,
Yes.
Mr. Fisher would like to speak to Mr. Sorrell. If you can set him down, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
What did you
All right. So this is. We'll pull that out of the way. Now. The next one, which I have several pictures on, and we'll focus on this, is poison gas. Poison gas was used, and it was effective in that it killed a lot and caused a lot of damage. The problem with poison gas is it was so volatile, and you could never guarantee where it was going to go, that both sides really experienced some severe casualties from it. In fact, so severe that in World War II, it is never used. Okay, so, at least against troops. Here's an example of guys they have covered up in an attempt to keep the gas from touching them. It would burn and cause, that is the breathing apparatus. This, around the face, this was an attempt to keep their faces from being burnt. And then your air supply came from this. Their hands right here are open, but they would have had gloves on or something to try to cover their skin.
The early stages of gas masks.
All right. This is an example of when somebody was not able to cover up. Yes. And here's what happened to him.
Oh, don't show us that.
Okay. I need you to understand just how horrible the gas was. It literally ate his face away.
So it just like falls off?
Yeah.
So, now, both the Germans, the Germans were in fact, shush and listen. The Germans were in fact the first to use gas. However, Britain and France both use it soon after. They start using it as well. Yes, ma'am.
I'm not trying to be, I don't know, but did they ever use like drugs in the war to kill people, like shoot them up or something?
They would use drugs often. World War I, World War II. They would use drugs if you were captured. They might use drugs to try to get you to talk. I know that drugs were far more heavily used. I don't know about Korea, but in Vietnam era and through, drugs were used in a lot of different, really unsavory ways. Okay, here's another one where this young man is burnt, his face is burnt, and his arms have been burnt as a result of the gas. Those areas that were covered with his clothes escaped the burns, but still it caused a lot of damage for him. Now, let me show you. This is what happens when the gas was released. It would, if you can see, it's moving across the land, right? Okay, and I don't know whether this is German releasing gas or if it's the Allies releasing gas, but how is the gas moving? What moves the gas?
Wind.
The wind.
So
Okay,
you
what
got
do we know about wind?
It can
It changes. It was not unusual in these set of circumstances that one side would release the gas and it would be moving along and suddenly the wind would change and it would come right back on them. That was not unusual. And so they had to protect themselves. Those who were releasing the gas had to protect themselves. And often they might not take care and find themselves in the middle of their own gas, causing a lot of damage, death, and causing a great number of wounds. The last picture I want to show you with this is the actual canisters that they used to release the gas. That's what they look like. This is a picture of the Germans getting ready to release the gas from the canisters. All right, let's move on and finish up. Tanks, armored tanks are going to play a role here. They were designed to move across broken ground because that's what was no man's land. It was a very nasty area to move across. The tanks look something like this. You should have most of that written. This is what the tanks would. They weren't terribly reliable. They broke down quite a bit. The areas that they were most likely to break down was they would lose their tracks to move across. They would also, their engines would often break down. This was a huge piece of machinery that had to be constantly in repair. You can see here are the machine guns that were used to try to, well, again, mow down anybody who was trying to get to the tanks. They were not particularly effective for World War I. They could have been. They certainly, when they were working, were very good, but they didn't always work very well. All right. Then another thing that was a new technology was the Zeppelin. The Zeppelin was, of course, a,
Blimp?
yeah, what we know as a blimp today. The
Can you
Zeppelin,
have a picture?
do what?
Can you have a picture?
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There you go. The Zeppelin was provided a opportunity for long-range bombing. These ships would travel to. They were mostly German. They traveled to England. They would try to bomb England. They were somewhat successful, but not as successful as maybe the later airplanes would be. Okay. So they were known as lighter than airships. Then you had airplanes. You should have gotten this in. There's no reason not to be this far along. Airplanes equipped with machine guns. Their pilots became flying aces and they fought in dogfights. Those who were the best were known as flying aces. Baron von Richthofen was the greatest, and he was a German, greatest air ace of World War I. He shot down 82 planes, 80 planes. He shot down 80 planes, more than anybody else. But he was killed towards the end of the war by a young Englishman who just happened to be at the right spot at the right time and was able to shoot him down. German U-boats also going to play a big role here. The U-boats would look something like this. Did look like this, I shouldn't say. This was a U-boat that existed in World War I. You can see it's very crude by comparison to what we have today. This was maybe about a football length in size. Today, submarines are several football lengths in size and huge. This would probably accommodate maybe 50 men or not. I'm not done. How are you done? Okay, you need to wait on me and not be putting everything away. Did you upload and do everything you should? Okay, then you better be listening and not doing other things. Alright, and then finally, in order to survive some of these submarines, they arranged what's known as convoys, which will be merchant ships that will be protected by warships. Warships that would look something like this. These warships would surround these merchant ships. You can see the cannons and the guns that were used to protect the merchant ships. And the merchant ships traveled in groups, large groups like this. There could be as many as several hundred ships traveling at a time.
How's there a picture of this?
Do what?
Like, did they have cameras back then?
Well, certainly.
What?
They had movies. They had movies. Remember I told you this was going to be the war where we actually are going to see actual footage of the war.
Did they
We'll
just try to
see.
take like videos for fun and not get shot down?
Ooh, I don't know about that. Okay, one thing I want you to notice, and make sure you upload this before, and be quiet while we're doing this. Here is an example of a warship protecting
1 minute.
most of, but there were many warships. You can just see that one.
Brad.
I'm waiting for you to get quiet. You better make sure that you have uploaded. Hey, Brad, do you want to stay and just finish real quick, or did you get it done?
Miss Tinson,
Yes.
so this is gonna be on Moodle?
Yeah, I hope so.